It's so nice to meet you.
It's so nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So your film was quite timely and it had such a sense of urgency right from the beginning. And so one of the things that struck me right at the beginning is Lena's refusal to leave the apartment and continue live streaming. And this results in her arrest. And this refusal to leave and continue fighting is also seen in her husband, especially after her arrest. And so I'm interested to know, like, how were you able to show what resistance can look like through your characters, like what it means to resist oppression?
Well, it was very important to me to get to the human side of it, to the very, inner personal part of all that decision making, not to struck in a monumental heroic tone in this film. I try to portray the characters as the very fragile human beings who have strengths rather than, a posture made out of stone and unbreakable kind of figure. Because I also think that, well, it's more real, and it makes the cost of the decision more real and more, you know, relatable too.
Yeah, I especially loved how you divided the film into flashbacks. Um, this really helped us understand like who they were at their core and what their motivations are. And can you just discuss the flashbacks and how they, as you said, like humanize these characters and show them that they are real people that have a lot to lose?
I thought that it's very important to, to introduce a little bit of the context of what happened before. And as this film is based on true story and is inspired by a true story and by true characters, one of my conversation with the journalist Igor Ilya, who inspired the character of Ilya, the husband in the film, was actually about that. How was it right before this one transmission that led to her arrest? To the journalist's arrest. And he told me that at this point they were really strongly considering leaving the country because it got impossible to work in the country. And it gave me, such a profound feeling that they were, so close to being out. And yet this one step led to a situation that was unchangeable. So that's how it is in the film. And I also felt that it worked better. The flashbacks, the entry point to the story is the transmission. So we get into the context in what's happening in Belarus, in what's happening outside politically, and then we can relate better with the personal choices of the characters after we are aware of the context. So that's why it's done in the flashbacks. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it kind of helped me understand what people on the ground must be going through instead of like kind of the political noise behind it. And one of the lines, my favorite line from your film is when he's trying to convince her to, confess, and he goes, "What do you have to fight them with? Martyrdom? Like you're just going to kill yourself?" And Lena's sacrifice will definitely help people after her. But I think the hard part sometimes of standing up to injustice is you might not see justice in your lifetime. And so, how has the rise of independent journalism encouraged people in Belarus to stand up to their government and not back down?
Well, unfortunately, it's actually the other way around at this point, because after the presidential elections in 2020, it was August 2020, the huge scale of protest and the resistance rose up, and it was drowned in the repression, in a brutal pacification of the protest, in murdering several protesters on the streets, and not only on the streets, but just like in their yard, as it happened to Roman Bandarenka, who is also mentioned in the film. And the situation with the real journalist who inspired Lena's character actually was the beginning of totalitarian silencing of any independent voice in Belarus. we enter the story, as I mentioned, the elections were in August, and we enter the story almost on the 100th day of the protest. We're 3 months in the protest. We're in November, and the protest has been exhausted by the moment. It's very hard to keep on resisting. The repressions grow stronger. And she was the first journalist during this protest who actually got this severe punishment, which seemed very severe at the moment when she was convicted for 2 years. But from today's perspective, from today's Belarus, actually we probably would have used the phrase, she was lucky to get only 2 years, because the journalists after her were convicted to 5, 6, and this kind of prison terms. Of course, she did not get out after the 2 years, and her prison sentence was prolonged, and she's due to serve 8 years and 3 months in prison now. But I think that gives you the image of where it went. So she was not, the story in the film is not the beginning of the revolution. It's actually the end of the protest, of this attempt to resist, and the aftermath of it. And it's very important for me to show just like this. It's more interesting for me as a filmmaker to show this part of the story than the very inspirational, heroic, but sort of obvious part which happens at the beginning. The way you deal with the consequences and the way you pay the price for your choices. This is something that inspired me a lot to do this story.
Yeah, the scene when she's in the cell waving and, trying to put a smile on her face. And normally people in that situation, they're broken and they're tired. And so a lot of this hope you've described has been diminished since this arrest. And as you said, things have gotten worse. And so where's the hope, you think, and how can things maybe take a turn?
Well, I think the hope is in that place that make my characters resist, despite not having anything to fight with. For me, this is where the hope is. Despite all the overwhelming power of the system, they still try to preserve themselves. Because at the end, in my opinion, it's not about winning. It's not even about getting to the point where you inspire the change. It's basically about preserving themselves as the individuals, and to be able to imagine the point when this all is over, and to imagine how they would look back at their choices. So it's about that. So the strength that urges us to resist, even if the fight looks like a lost cause.
Excellent. Yeah, they stuck to their principles, and a lot of it had to do with who they are as people, not so much, as you said, this end goal. And so what would you like people to take away from your film after watching it?
Well, I think it's very important to me that this idea of what is happening in Belarus now stays in the heads of those people who watched it. And if they can relate to what the characters are going through, if they can relate to the fate of those who are currently imprisoned in Belarus, it would be the outcome I'd be happy about.
Okay, well, thank you, Mara, for your time today.
Thank you so much.
And I hope you enjoy. I'm sure it's very hectic over there where you are.
It's been wonderful. I mean, it's a awesome experience for me to be here in Tribeca with my debut feature film, and it's a huge honor. I'm very glad I can present it here at the festival, and watching it with the audience for the first time, it's a very special experience. And
Yeah.
it was with me. I'm glad it happened here. Yeah.
Well, hopefully many more in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Have a good